It is another beautiful afternoon here on the program Africa Discourse on independent television. My name is Evan Sunohugi. On this show, we talk about issues on the continent of Africa, issues that will make you to understand what is really going on the continent, economic issues, political issues, and of course, issues that will broaden your spectrum as a black man, as it were. All right, so today we are going to be talking about integration in Africa. For quite some time now, it's been on, and it's been something that Africa leaders have bothered themselves with, because as it stands now, it looks as if the continent is not together. You talk about different members of different blocs on the continent of Africa going their way, like the very recent one whereby you may like calling it the famous three that have opted out of the ECOWAS, and they even threatened that they were going to form their own regional bloc. So in such a situation, we really don't have integration in Africa. You may call it political integration, or you may call it a need for the continent to be integrated economically. Well, today to look at the issues around Africa, a continent in their need of integration, the role of the Africa Union. We are so privileged to have two eminent discussants here this afternoon. One is going to be joining us from the UK via the Zoom, and of course we'll have one here. Please join me to welcome Nowita Igbotako, a serial author, and of course an international resolution expert. And as if the title is not enough, very recently he's the executive director Center for Research for Good Governance in Nigeria. Nowita Igbotako, a very good afternoon to you.
Afternoon, viewers. It's a pleasure once again to be here.
All right. So as the discussion goes on, we're going to be joining Peter Owabi, who's going to be joining us virtually from the UK. All right, we have Peter Owabi. Peter Owabi, a very good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon to you too.
Yeah, Dr. Peter Owabi, nice to have you on the show today.
Nice to have you too.
Okay, Dr. Peter Owabi is a member of the PDP Campaign Council for Aswego Dalo in diaspora, and of course a political discussant, you know, as issues go on in Africa. All right, so Peter Owabi, perhaps we may just start with you if you are right there.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, all right, so about a few days ago, on Sunday to be precise, we had leaders on the continent of Africa gathering in Ghana and looking at ways to talk about the need for Africa as a continent to be integrated. And we understand that the Mauritanian president, who is also the chairperson of Africa Union, also emphasized the need of funding you know, that integration, because very recently now, we understand that, or soon, if you like now, the AU is going to be meeting the G20 and of course the United Nations. So there is a need for us to be united as one entity before meeting the outer world. Let's pick it up from there. What are your comments on these moves? I'm talking about the disintegration in Africa.
Yes, well, yes, it's very important to be properly integrated when you are talking about global matters, because you will realize that the entire continent of the world, it's one global entity. And for the African Union, which have thus been inaugurated into the G20 to make it G21, by the Indian Prime Minister, is to be able to foster a better relationship with the African countries. If you are aware that it was only South Africa that was part of the G20, but the rest of the world thought it wise to be part of African integration. And Africans under the present chairman, who was inaugurated in I think February 2024. As the chairman of the African Union, Mohamed Gaziani, thought it wise to prepare Africans first, to integrate them first, and so that before they come into the alliance with the G20, so that they could come up and speak with one voice and be able to be prepared to be able to create a lot of relevance when they eventually come into cognizance or come into meetings with the members of the G20. And so the African nation, which is the African Union, thought it wise to first come into a Congress and address, to address the fulfilling hopes of Africans to the rest of the world in one voice. And I think that is why that Sunday meeting was basically geared towards concretizing their selfless general opinion, or to be able to come together recognizably as one entity before the G20 nation meeting. I think it's a good move, considering the fact that in the past, African nations are so disintegrated with relevance relations to the other countries who have felt dissatisfied with the entire organization of the African unity and union, and decided to leave and decided to expunge their membership from the African Union. I'm talking about these West African countries, which includes Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso. And yes, they are not part of it. So primarily, the African Union is set up for unity. And so if there's no unity by the disintegration of these other members, African countries, particularly West African countries who have left the Union, then it shows a lot of concern. And it means that first and foremost, the objectives are not being met. And that easily will disqualify the membership application that the Indian Prime Minister has recently included Africa in the G20.
I'll pause you there now. Now, viewers out there, we also have a third discussant on this show today, Professor Julius Iyasele from the Great University of Benin, Professor of Chemistry from the University of Benin. Professor, you're welcome to the show.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay. All right, so Nwita Ibutako, we still have you here now. Let's continue from where Barrister Dr. YB hinged his point, talking about the three famous nations. I don't want to use that word, but that's what they go by. The three nations that have left the ECOWAS, of which they are also members of the AU. And we're talking about the need for Africa as a continent to be united, to be integrated before meeting the G20 and the United Nations soon. Now, what ways, what efforts, how can we begin to get back these three nations back to ECOWAS so that ultimately we can really face the G20 and of course the United Nations as one entity?
Well, I have to bring them back. There are forces at work, serious forces at work. You know, the neocolonialism is at play. Imperialists they are at play. And talking about the rebellious three, we use the word rebellious three, which we want to address what led to their rebellious activities. It's an issue. What made Mali, Burkina Faso, and other, what made them to have gone this road into rebellious activities, even against ECOWAS, even against African Union, The continent is not at peace with itself. There's unity in disarray. The root of the crisis, is in colonialism. Colonialism. These guys came and they just put a knife and started tearing African borders to pieces. Without respect for tribe, for ethnic, for affiliations and all that. That's the problem. And how do you bring them back when the African leaders themselves, they're not even serious to rule positively? What has taken this rebellious spirit to the lane of rebellion? Because they have said that they don't want to be a boy to France. Because France has been a factor, manipulating the political situation, economic situations in such countries. development, have gone very far from these people. So if you want to address unity, I think it's a long, it is not an easy thing. And the process to bring them back, so to say, because these guys have gone. They are not with the ECOWAS, they are not with African Union. So, and a lot of forces are at work. Poverty is an issue. Somebody once said, Samuel Machel, Mozambique, he said, if a nation must live, tribalism must die. Tribalism is an issue in Africa. Poverty is an issue. Even the Kagame that is making waves in Rwanda, one of the things he has done is to try to kill ethnicity. Yeah. Tribalism. You say, I don't want, because of where they are coming from, the genocide and all that. So we don't want to hear anything about so tribe or so tribe. Let's So for Africa to bring these guys back, I think we should be talking about unity beyond lip service. And there are a lot of factors, interrelated factors. Poverty, ethnicity, tribalism, ethnic conflicts. These issues are rooted.
Okay. Now,
so where do they start from? Who is the chairman of ECOWAS? Our president is chairman of ECOWAS. Yeah. But we should not forget the fact how we emerge. Because there are issues. If a Mohamed Guzani is talking about unity, we'll give it a thumb. It's a fantastic move. But African leaders ready for unity, it's an issue. African leaders ready to lead the shadow of the colonial masters. Because most African leaders, they are still behind the shadow of colonial masters. And that's why the rebellious today say we don't want to be under any shadow.
Okay, now...
so it's a very...
yeah, let's pause you so that we come to Professor Julius Iyasele. Now, Prof, the chairman of the AU, the Mauritanian president, is stressing the need for us to expedite economic unification, expedite economic integration now. Little wonder whether it is more of economic disintegration that Africa has than political disintegration. Pick it up from there, Prof.
You see, there is an authoritative treatise that governs the standards of living. If you look at, for the Christians, I'm talking about the Bible. In Amos, it's written, it says, can two walk together except they be in agreement? What do we mean by economic integration now? How is that going to be possible? We have talked about free trade zone and all that, and we've seen where it has brought us. What we are simply saying by that is that we are throwing all doors and windows open for free, transportation and whatever, both goods and human beings and all that across Africa. Would that really work? Because for me, what I'm saying right now, the best to bring about development or a return for Nigeria from the poverty, from squalor, disease and whatever, is to lock up, or let me not use the word yet, bring in what the Chinese did. That is what we call a policy of isolation. The Chinese, at a point in time, isolated their country from all other countries of the world. We have heard one of our persons saying that when the Chinese go to such world meetings, they listen to whatever they say. They come back, pick what is good for them, domicile it, and go their own way. And it has become better for China. Yeah. That is the same thing. What are coming about economic integration? If you look at, I think we have one country, one of the very poorest country in ECOWAS.
It is urgent for
you have very many around the eastern country and all that. And the East Africa If you look at all of that, how is it going to be possible for us to throw our doors open? You have seen the number of destitutes on the Nigerian streets, and if you classify them, you find out where they are coming from. I don't know whether we are comfortable with that kind of situation. So what I think that we should do, the integration that I think we should do, is integration in diversity. What I mean by that is that Nigeria, yes, we be healthy as a country, and then if your brother, what I mean by that, a fellow African country is not doing well, you have to go. Just like we did in the case of war in Liberia and so many other places.
With the ECOMOG.
Yes,
yeah.
To bring peace into their own country. Do you understand? That is what I mean by the unity in diversity. Not that you now open your door down, and then if there is war in Benin Republic, for instance, your doors are on everything. At the end of the day, all your apparatus of government will shift, will change. Your plans will scatter because of change in population and style of living and all of that, and even demography. So how are we going to be able to cope with all of that? Even America, where you have so many states and all that, large as America is, and then they are all the same. They are called the United States of America. Are they all of them operating the same principles of economy? No. If you go there, the issues, they are different, slightly different.
But it's one nation.
Yeah, but it's one nation. That is what I mean now. That is one Africa. But then let the individual country operate according to, because the cultural differences are there. So you cannot administer people without considering so many factors as it applies to the style of living of those people. You understand? You cannot come here and then okay. Look at, there might be some countries that are maybe favorably disposed to these LGBT and all that. Are we ready to accept that? Very many other countries in Africa will not have touched that with a pinch of salt. They won't accept it. And so you must apply the culture of the people, the economic disposition of the people, and all that.
Okay.
And so, can you not say that you have integration and then you are going to open your windows, you open your doors, and everything, anything can happen? That is a mix-me.
Okay. All right, so Dr. YB, we still have you there. Dr. YB. Okay.
Yes.
All right. So, viewers out there, intermittently, you notice that there's a video that we'll have to show you. That video was what happened on Sunday, whereby Africa leaders had to meet in Ghana to discuss the need for them to be together, to be integrated as one entity, as one continent, before meeting the G20 and the United Nations very soon. So that's video. That's some of the African leaders that you are seeing now, and a crop of African leaders being together there. The Mauritanian president, who is also the chairperson of AU, had to speak that we need to really be together so that we can meet this outer world, so to say. Now, Dr. YB, when we talk about meeting the United Nations, most times I'm not particularly happy when we come back or when we go there. We go with our caps in our hands, rather than other nations of the world. They go there to tell their achievements over the decades, over the centuries and all that. But for Africa, African countries, they meet the United Nations. Such assembly is normally to go there to plead for debt cancellation and all that. Now, when we talk about integration now, don't you think there is need for us to talk against this, that let us not go there with all this begging attitude, Dr. YB?
Yes, I don't know. Well, you said about beggars, the African nation is a perpetual beggar. I mean, they are impudent beggars. And that is because they themselves are into waste. You are supposed to be able to manage your economy. However small your economy is, I mean, the diminutions of your economical strength and wideness of your economical strength based on your GDP and your export strength to be able to export and make some foreign exchange and be able to, grandulize your reserves, foreign exchange reserves. You must first of all show your strength of the internal governance before you start to think of exposing your economic liabilities and your, financial imperialism and your financial inferiority and your governance inferiority to the rest of the world. Now, I believe strongly that the United Nations, which we are aspiring to be part of, they are well organized. They have been able to organize themselves. The G20 are able to organize themselves to such an extent that they become admirable, enviable. And then Africa wants to be part of it. Meanwhile, if you look at the African Union, which is self-governance by themselves, which I think the membership consists of about 55 countries of Africa, they have not been able to come into the realization of their initial set objectives. They have deviated from their initial set objective. They have not been able to come into cognizance and combat, the ugly faces of their challenges. For instance, the terrorism which they face, the personal self-aggradation, which is their DNA, grabbing the national economy by very few individuals, the corruptness and the corruption of the African continent is still very, very glaring. They have not been able to combat that. They have not been able to come into policies to advance the betterment of the average Africans, in spite of all the grandeurs, in spite of all the national and natural, endowments of their resources. They have not been able to do all of that, and they are looking on how to stretch their legs of corruption, their hands of corruption, their ineptness into the rest of the world, like the United Nations. So I do not think that they are really ripe to go searching for the rest of the world for them to be part of. What do they want to be part of the rest of the world for? Ordinarily, ECOWAS, they have not been able to manage it. They have countries fleeing away from ECOWAS. And why are those countries that are fleeing away from ECOWAS, why are they fleeing away from ECOWAS? They are so disenfranchised, they are so dissatisfied, disgruntled, that the way of governance in West Africa is extremely appalling and calls for a reconstruction and renovation of minds of people. So they decided to come into maybe coup in their country, carry that coup to ask the government that are not performing well. And then, of course, our chairman of the ECOWAS, which is Tinubu, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, the president of Nigeria, he himself has come into the governance with very questionable means of political democracy.
Yeah, Dr. Wabi, let us be careful with that now.
No, it's fine, yes, but that is the truth. I mean, the democracy is so... Okay, the last democratical election they had in London here, which was about the 25th of August, did you see anybody going to court? Nobody went to court. UK is part of the United Nations, is part of the United Nations. Yes, they are part of the G20, yes. But you see, why are we not able to emulate the betterment of the progression of the people? We are able to emulate corruption. We are able to foster and continue to foster corruption to the bitter pill swallowing of the people of such African nations. The last election in the UK, nobody went to court. Why? Because it was duly done democratically and very transparently. But when we do our own, we hush and hold it and almost deliberate on it like native doctors who do things in clandestine. And then you want to carry this your attitude of devoid crystality, of devoid openness, devoid apparent democratic functions and democratic means. You want to carry it to the rest of the world. You want to export your ineptness in Africa to the rest of the world. Look at the African nations, for instance. The head of states or their leaders want to perpetuate themselves into power, even at the cost of the sufferings of the people, at the cost of the dehumanization of the people. The OAU, which metamorphosed in 2002 to this African Union, they had their Christian objective.
Okay, Dr. Wabi, let's pause you. When the rebellious three, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, when they left the ECOWAS bloc, we saw some sanctions that ECOWAS laid on them, maybe trying to pull them back. But the big brother house, the AU, did not actually come forth. I mean, for such a bloc, one would have expected that they would have lifted their hammer in the first place. So for them now to be talking about integration, what is the sincerity of purpose in all of this?
There's lack of leadership. You just said it. Where is the African Union since? Not a statement, not a press release. Nothing for the African Union. When even the ECOWAS were having crises, they're having problems. You want to say these set of people are serious? These leaders, they have mission or vision? That's a problem. The leaders and leadership in Africa is something that is retrogressive. Prof for trying to say something. When people are corrupt from top to bottom. The electoral system is not transparent. Corruption has been institutionalized. According to Prof, is this kind of people that want to...
Dr. Waifu,
is this kind of African leaders, Mohamed Gozani, what they call himself? Is this kind of thing you want to go and present to the G20 or something when your backyard is rotting? Just as Prof said, we have the best things in Africa. We cannot harness the economic progress in Africa. It's an issue. Colonialism, the African leaders must be able to say no to colonialism. African leaders must be able to say no to imperialism. Somebody don't mention about what China did. Mao and his boys, Zhou Enlai and Co, when they came in 1949. In China, they look at the world. They remember at the time Japan colonized them. Japan, their neighbor, Highland, colonized China. They said, no, we must rise above this. And today, where is China? Deng Xiaoping, one of the best leaders they emerged from Mao. So we need leadership. The problem in Africa and with Africans is leadership. So, Mohamed Gozani or Gozano, the chairperson,
AU. Yeah.
I'm not sure it's a serious character. That is my point. Because even when these guys were breaking away, the rebellious three, not a statement, not a move to call any meeting. They went to sleep. What do they want to go and do in G20 meeting in United Nations? For me, it's jamboree. They're not serious. This reminds me of people like Kwame Nkrumah. Reminds me of Emperor Haile Selassie. These are people that funded the Organization of African Union in 1963. They saw coups, they saw counter coups, they saw manipulation from the Western world. They said we must form Organization of African Union. And we saw some of it. People like Ahmed Secretary, we saw what they did. But the game that started playing in 2002, in July, when they started the African Union, where has African Union brought us? Is there not a leadership deficit that even when there was crisis within the economic community of Africa, ECOWAS, the African Union did not bring out any statement?
Okay. Now,
so what are we saying?
Yeah, Professor Julius.
So African leaders should jettison colonialism. Yeah. Should jettison the idea of corruption. You should be ready to govern the people, not all this artificial facade that we presented.
Okay, now, Professor Julius, we talk about colonialism as a major problem in Africa.
It
is. Of course, we also talk about inbuilt corruption. Yeah. So, from your own point of view, what do you think has really drew us back, all this while?
Excuse me, if you take Nigeria as a case point, since we got our phantom independence whites. You know, yeah, the whites.
We got independence.
It's phantom. We have remained under the apron spring of the British.
It's a fake.
That is the honest truth. Now we have even acquired more masters. Wow. USA, that's America, has become also one of our masters, and more are even coming and dictating to us on how we should run our country. And of course, like you were saying that they are telling the three dissidents in ECOWAS that they were doing them this or that. Let me tell you, it is like a blind man reading to somebody with sight and telling you, those people have seen the problem their country have, and their countrymen are behind them.
Yeah, but they're also not free. Yeah, those three countries now, Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso, they are still not free from the colonization.
Fine.
They may have left the French colonies.
You see, that is where you must start from somewhere. You understand? Because it is written that the only thing that is impossible is a change. A change has come to them. And now they tasted one master. And I've seen that that master is a slave master, not just an ordinary master. And then so they have decided to change from that master, and then they have maybe unto themselves another master trying to come up with them. But however, they will watch whether that same master will toe the line of the initial one. Otherwise, they should also. But what I want to say here is that I want to encourage African leaders. No matter even how you came into power, Nigeria as a case point, a time comes, nobody tells you how to run your home. You come to a point of no return, like we are now, because of the level of hunger and squalor we are facing in Nigeria. Which of these masters have said, we have heard your cry, like it is in the Bible. We want to help, we are coming to your aid, we want to deliver you. But instead, what they will do here, I said I was on this platform at a point during the COVID-19, when a vaccine was discovered in America to take care. They refused to give to us, but they sent to Paris. They were telling us different stories then that has not been tested. That same week, that these people don't like us. They want to keep you perpetually where you are because this is their farm. But the day you open your eyes, of course, you will be liberated. And they will have no more opportunity to pester or to, how do I put it? That is, pester or use you as their own farm. So let me tell you, because why am I saying that I want to encourage African leaders to stand on their own? Civilization started in Africa. It started in Egypt. African countries are, let me tell you, the best in life that are free, that are presented or given to the world by God are present in Africa. They are best here. We have the best weather. We have the best, we have water in our water aquifer underground. We have the best arable lands. We have everything. Look at the solar system that is coming on. The best places where it is going to survive is in Africa because of the volume of sun that we have in this place. What is it that we don't have in Africa other than wisdom? Okay. It's only wisdom that is not available here. And so I'm encouraging African leaders, please come up and stand on your own and tell these people to go to blazes with whatever they have. Not to go to for the first time. If they are arriving there for the first time, then they get there and tell them that we have come of age. We are no more asking for anything. Let us, if somewhere also in the Bible, Esther said, if I perish, I perish. A time has come, we have reached there, so where we can make such statements because we have never changed since, suffering all the way. You understand? It's even worse now.
Okay, now, Dr. YB, we still have you there. Now, we are trying to examine, the role of AU in trying to integrate Africa as a continent together. We've talked about the rebellious three, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, that have gone their way now. They've opted out of the ECOWAS bloc, and that's the way it is now. Now, what kind of face do you think the AU leaders are going to be putting before the United Nations and the G20 at the meeting? I mean, for the fact that they did not really play a major role in trying to pull back this threat back to ECOWAS, as it were.
You see, there's, yes, that, sometimes we become very emotional when we discuss issues about Africa. And for instance, on my own personal self, I need a lot of emotional purgation to be able to discuss this issue, because before you know it, I get carried away emotionally, because it's extremely bitter to see the Africa we grew up in, even as young children, that was so beautiful, so free, devoid of compassing, hatred and, human oppression, emasculation of human beings, to come into such a standard in life at this age. One of the reasons they are perpetuating, or the founders of OAU in 1967, thereabout, was that they wanted a unified Africa, of course, which later became African Union. The OAU wanted a unified Africa, devoid of colonialism or colonial mentality, to strengthen literacy and eradicate illiteracy. Those were the formative motives for African Union. But today you will discover that this same African Union master operators are not looking into, they are so backwards, they are not even looking into the motives that brought the formation of African Union. They are not even looking at it, being able to crystallize what the motives and objectives are. They are far from it. We are looking at human rights issues. African nations, we see, the deployment of dehumanization in and around the crannies of Africa. They will pay blind eyes to it. Look at a country like Gambia or something. They were going to have a little meeting in their country. The president went ahead and bought 90 SUV jeeps, one of the poorest countries in Africa. And those SUV jeeps were going to be used for less than 2 hours. And then why are you spending all that kind of dollars for that kind of little insignificant event that would take only 2 hours? You ruin your country's economy. And nobody says anything about it. Look at Nigeria, for instance. A country like Nigeria, who is perpetuating the need to become chairman of African unity, chairman of global unity. You are spending over 15 billion naira to build the house of a vice president.
Wow.
Who is not too, and then of course, you are doing that, nobody says anything about it. And at the expense of the sufferings of the people of that nation. You don't say anything about it. So what is the point of African Union? You are not looking into the dehumanization of human beings. You are not looking against the promotion of the literacy of human beings. You are not looking at the health care. You are not looking at the fair care of the people. You are not looking at the national social amenities that are lacking in these African countries. Instead, we are sustaining, we are boosting the economic circle of these our leaders, who themselves don't have much to offer. They all grew up in the vagaries of hardship. They all grew up in the villages of the remotest villages where there was no opportunities. Now you come into leadership of your people, you want to oppress them so much and steal all their funds. If Africa is going to be devoid of such motives, of egalitarianism and unity, and equality, then there is no need for these African nations trying to become a part of a bigger picture of civilization. United Nations boasts of at least 80% of the world economy. They boast again of about the same 80% of world exportation, and they boast of at least another 80% of the population of members of the United Nations. But what have you achieved? Africans come most of the time to infiltrate and dilute the goodness of these other nations who care so much about their citizens. We don't care about us. Look at Truss in UK the other day. She became a prime minister. After 6 weeks in office, she said no, she cannot take the challenge. She stepped down and allowed people, look at what's the Biden of America recently has been urged to step down, so stepping down. So when we say African unity, what African nation, what are we really talking about? What are we thinking about? We don't even have the financial muscles to be able to come together. We are thinking about creating a unity, creating a country trading, and we are thinking of all those united fronts and all those finance mechanism for union projection and all those type of things. But the integration and the unification of stance we wanted for Africans is not there, because Nigeria, being as rich as it is, Nigeria is the richest country in Africa, followed by maybe South Africa and Egypt and South Africa. Nigeria is the richest country of Africa with about $477 billion GDP. But the people of Nigeria, are we galvanizing and hullabalooing on the wealth of Nigerians? No. We are just there as a people suffering, based on the mentality, based on the selfish mentality of our leaders. And we leave all those behind and start to say, Africa want to join the United Nations. We are better sit down where we are and don't go and corrupt the betterment of other nations. That is what I have.
All right, just Dr. Waibi.
Exactly that same opinion.
Yeah, all right, but let me come to you as we comment at this end now. Now, gentlemen, perhaps these issues we are talking about now, they are more individualistic in nature. What do I mean? I mean, we may be talking about Africa as a continent, but let's look at one or two nations, even within the continent of Africa. We'll talk about Rwanda today. We don't talk about human rights issues anymore, or it has reduced. We don't talk about poverty that some nations of Africa has. It may have reduced. We'll talk about South Africa today. We don't talk about some other issues that some other African nations have. So don't we think, or should we not think, that these issues are more individualistic in nature, and they should be attended to individually rather than trying to encompass them all within the continent? And which I would tackle.
See, the issue is very clear. African leaders, they're a bunch of unserious people.
You cannot say
no, yeah.
I mean,
but that is the reality.
But we just talked
the
about
benchmark,
one or two. We just talked about one or two African leaders.
Paul Kagame, most of them.
Why don't you say some of them?
Some of them.
And that would be by your own opinion.
Okay. Now, it took Rwanda to go to grave, the massacre, before sense came to that country. Before Kagame said, oh, gentlemen, let's bury tribalism. Let's kill corruption. Let's do this, let's do that. The man has his problem because he's a dictator by excellence. But I think the man is doing something.
But that's not an issue. I mean, it's not an issue in the country today.
Well, human rights is an issue because if you talk about democracy, you must talk of open society. You cannot close society because you want to develop. That is one of the things that is going to give Donald Trump in the United States. That's why the democratic people, they are saying, Biden, please step down. Let a younger, a sharper guy with intellect, let's confront this guy. Because Donald Trump is a threat to world democracy, to global peace. So now, talking of African leaders are not serious. Most of them are not serious. So until we see the likes of Kwame Nkrumah. Nkrumah had his problems. But those are people who have genuine mission and vision for Africa and Africans. Because as intellectuals of the highest level, they saw colonialism as an issue, destroying Africa. So now, the present crop of African leaders must wake up, must address issues of governance. People are wallowing in squalor, disease. People are dying like flies. What are they going to say in the G20? When you have not addressed the issue of poverty in Africa? Must African leaders go to a G20 or United Nations before they put up a blueprint to take Africa from poverty, from dungeon, economic dungeon? African leaders must be serious. I want a conference, a meeting of African leaders. Not too long ago, Paul Kagame, I saw a clip. He challenged African leaders. He said, what are you going to do in a conference in Switzerland? What are you going to do in a conference in Geneva? You don't need those conferences. Stay in your country and govern. Stop corruption.
All right, so, Prof.
So, African leaders should get organized. That is my point.
Yeah, Prof, quickly, just 2 minutes.
Get organized.
Yes, it is good to emphasize here that the reasons, the vision for AU had failed. So AU had failed because the vision was for integration, for peace,
prosperity,
and then prosperity. If you look at the 3 reasons for setting up AU, we have failed in all of them because Africa is living in turmoil. Africa does not have peace. Africa is where you have the poorest countries in the world, higher population. And then in terms of integration, you have seen the rebellious 3 pull out. What that means is that African states are disorganized. So the 3, what we need to do is to return back home and work from inside. That is what a wise people must do. Start from your own country. Do what your citizens need. Reduce the level of energy in your countries by doing what is right. I want to take this opportunity to plead with our leaders, or do I say our rulers? You see, the issue is,
our rulers now.
Yes, issue is, please, I beg of you, show compassion to your people. Many of you already have the money that generations of you we need.
Wow.
But the only thing that is still holding on to us is beyond the physical.
All right, so
I ask that let's pray. And then lastly, I want to also posit that I already emphasize, we should dissuade these international communities from our governance. Because look at the Sahrawi Republic. They are still being colonized by even a fellow African neighbor. What effort have this international community or even the AU, what have they done?
Okay.
Who killed Magofulio?
Yeah.
Who killed Thomas Sankara? Who killed the other man?
Samora Machel.
No effort has been done.
So what effort? So you see, those people will never help us.
Okay, Dr. YB, just 30 seconds as we wrap up now. Quickly, Dr. YB.
The Africans, most of African countries, our economy very deleterious. We think that government should cut spending. Economy is so bad, but you see one of Africa's president will be going with about 100 cars of convoy. I mean, boy, the man is a little midget. It's not too big for even. It's not too big to ride a bicycle. But we have 100 envoy from a very small, tiny body. And meanwhile, the country is suffering absolute impoverization. So it is not right. And then you want to go to Africa, United Nations, and all the rest of things. Come on, what government spending? Forget, for instance, the Nigerian Senate is so spuriously spendidizing expenditure. They use the whole of the economy, it doesn't matter to them, to buy jeeps and build on their own riches and wealth. This is wrong. If we must come into equity, we have to have some kind of clean hands. If we must bear people
do equity
to suffer, people bear with us, you must first of all show that you are cutting your excesses. Not to live in affluence and then galvanize the rest of the world with all the money you have. You are going to borrow money to be able to cut your own value of your money. Because you wanted to borrow money, they told you, okay, the value your naira. You already ran home, the value your naira. The money you borrowed, use it to buy yacht, use it to buy private jet, use it to treat yourself in clinics. These are things that are deleterious and they are not good for the citizens of the people. Okay. So you cannot expect developmental plunge into health and wealth when our leaders are so personalized, so self-aggravated, so self-concerned, so self-corrupted. From their DNA, they are globally corrupted. And they want to go and corrupt the rest of the nations of the world.
All right, so
they want to be part of the United Nations and part of other nations. To me, let government, first of all, cut its spending and show a good example. of economic viability by way of cutting their own
All right, so
excesses.
we bet the discussion here this afternoon. We want to say a very big thank you to Dr. YB for joining all the way from UK this afternoon. Doctor, thank you so much. All right, so a very big thank you to the two gentlemen here, Nowutai Butako, Syria author,
Thank you.
An international public resolution expert, and also Professor Austin Yaselo, a professor of chemistry from the University of Net. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having
All right,
me.
so that's the program. We also need to reiterate here that opinions are shared on this program are entirely the opinions of our guests. You may be the next person we invite, so that you also come here and let us have your opinion on the issues. We do not have opinion on these issues. Independent radio and television, we don't share our opinion. We leave the opinions to you, the viewers, and also the guests are there to say it for the public to learn from. My name is Evan Sunokuge. Until same time, next week on the same program. Goodbye, and God bless you.